Hello, hello, and welcome to Summer Nights on Cosi Talks Live. It is summer here in Florida. I mean, I know some of y'all are drinking still hot drinks and all, but it is summer in Florida, and it's hot. It's hot. I'm just gonna say it's hot. All right, guys, let's get this party started. I took a break off last week because I was celebrating one of my daughters who was receiving a really lovely, lovely award. So proud of both of my girls. I got one who's graduating this year. The next one's right behind her, and they're both kicking butt, taking names, and my sons as well. So proud mom moment last week, but happy to be back. If you are watching the replay, hit replay in the comments section. Give me a shout out. Send me your questions. I do go back after the show is over to pick up any questions that I may have missed. And also for any folks who are posting questions for the replay. Emily is saying it is in the 50s here. Daniel is from Kansas City. Tom coming in from Canada, sipping his ginger ale. Let's see. We got Pam in the house as well. We got Scott with his cold cherry drink mix and his water. So proud of Scott of all the progress he is making. We've got Mark on board with the big game tonight. Well, Mark, I am glad that you are here with me tonight because I think I'm way cooler than any game because I got the cool music. What can I say? I love it. I got this cool music going on board. Emily, I love the fact that your sister is dancing to it. We got Marty coming in from the great state of Texas. Man, do not mess with Texas. In rehab, drinking some tea. We've got Janie coming in from Canada. There's my boy, Grasshopper Van Gregory, coming in from Texas as well as a Texan invasion. We got Robert from Georgia with coffee in his cup. Christy from Auburn, Nebraska, drinking iced tea. Emily, of course, from Central PA with hot horchata latte. Emily, I don't think I've ever seen you with the same drink twice, and they just keep getting more and more interested. Let me give a shout out to my Instagram peeps. All right, we got a couple people here on board with Instagram. So guys, feel free to start putting your questions in. So because I was absent last week, I've got a few more questions and I'm so excited about it. And then also sounding off tonight. That needs to probably just be a segment in my Cosi Talks show in general, because I feel like I always have something to sound off about. But tonight's sound off, ooh, that one's going to hit it real good. So guys, for those of you who are watching me for the first time and wondering who is this crazy Floridian here talking on the phone, on the camera, my name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist, amputee specialist here in Tampa, Florida. I've been a PT now for a little over 23 years. And as I mentioned, working with amputees is my passion. All right, so let's just jump into the first question. First question came in from Janie. She asks, what do people typically do with their old liners, sleeves, etc., once they are worn out, have rips or tears? Is there a good way to repurpose them? They're so expensive, and I hate to think of just throwing them out. In an answer, no. Unfortunately, with these liners, the silicone, the polyurethane, the thermoplastic, the gel, elastomer that they're made out of, there's no way to reuse them, unfortunately. In terms of like recycling and upcycling, I mean, I've seen some people get real creative with things that they do. But for those liners, it's kind of a twofold thing. The material itself, once you're done using it, if there's a rip or tear in it, that's it, game over. It's not going to be functional as a liner anymore. And especially if it's all stretched out. As for the actual material itself, I would love to look into that. How is it possible to recycle just this kind of, silicone material? Because it kind of drives me nuts that all this is going to a landfill somewhere. Another thing that really I don't understand is why we cannot repurpose and reuse prosthetic knees and prosthetic feet. Now, I know the company line is, well, because of liability purposes and FDA, and I'm sure they'll throw in some sort of governmental agency that is preventing us from being able to repurpose some of this durable medical equipment. But quite honestly, outside of that, I think it's nonsense. I see it all the time when I go to the Goodwill thrift stores and I see walkers, perfectly good walkers that are just sitting there, wheelchairs, crutches, all sorts of durable medical equipment. It's called durable medical equipment because it's durable. It's made out of metal. It's made out of, and yes, granted, it has parts that get worn out, but, these parts could easily be replaced and refurbished. So I'm kind of waiting on the day where we can come up with a solution whereby we inspect these items, determine if they really can be used again, and instead of just throwing them away, these prosthetic feet and knees that cost a minimum of a couple of $1,000s and upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. And then after 3 years, we declare it to be invalid. And I think it's completely insane, especially when some of these parts are made out of, some of these really crazy durable materials that we use in airplanes, fiberglass, carbon fiber, all these materials that are meant to be sturdy and durable. So why can't we recycle these and repurpose them in our country? No sense. So again, it's just one of those things where you just look at the waste in this country from from many standpoints, but from that standpoint in particular. There are two organizations that I generally recommend, folks. Obviously, one of them is the Range of Motion Project, ROMP. If you go to their website, they have a clinic in Guatemala and in Ecuador, and they do accept these items. They cannot accept used liners or sockets. And that's mainly because those materials, once they're used, they really cannot be used again for that purpose. But they do accept prosthetic feet and knees. I do believe they pay for postage. If you go to their website, it'll have the information there. Another organization that I am personally not connected with, I have not met them yet, but I've heard a lot of wonderful things about them, is Penta. I think it's Penta. Gosh, I always forget their name. Penta Recycling. But if you were to type in Penta Prosthetic Recycling, I know that their website would come up. But for now, those are the options that you have. I would encourage you to do so. Another thing I would also highly recommend is that those of you who are upgrading to a different foot, or even perhaps a different knee, keep the old foot and perhaps repurpose it as a pool foot or a beach foot. Obviously, that season is present here in Florida all year round, but in the rest of the country, we're starting to head into pool and water season and water sports and activities. To preserve your everyday walking leg, using an old foot and an old knee and having your prosthetist kind of put together a leg from old parts that you already have is a great option and very inexpensive option. Let's see. Emily says, I have several sets of old KFOs just sitting around taking up space. It drives me nuts, guys. It drives me insane. And for me, it's kind of a two-part thing because, you're replacing a prosthetic foot every 3 to 5 years, right? Is it because the foot is truly, truly worn out? Okay. In which case I'm just like, good heavens, are you like King Kong banging your foot around, or is it because, the logical thing is you perhaps are upgrading to a different foot to better suit your mobility? Okay, great, wonderful. But you still have this foot that is perfectly in perfectly good shape, right? These manufacturers didn't make these feet to only last 3 years. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. And even with the knees, the microprocessor knees with that computerized technology, it can get a little dicey, I guess, after 3 to 5 years. But the actual mechanics of the knee itself, it doesn't just stop working after 3 to 5 years. Kind of drives me nuts, right? And these parts can be replaced. Okay, it's kind of like a car. There are some people that they replace their car every 3 to 5 years. I do not fall into that category. Okay. My family and I, we keep our cars, we take good care of them. We replace parts as they break down, and we literally will run our cars into the ground. I have a beautiful truck that is now over 25 years old. Gorgeous Toyota truck that we've taken really good care of, and it keeps working. So as you can see, this is kind of something I'm like, why? So much waste, right? All right. So if anybody from the FDA is listening, or whatever governing body is listening to this that can maybe help out with this, can we do something about this, please? Just saying. All right, we got John C coming in from San Diego. Emily says, and I have 2 old manual wheelchairs and I have resources for those. Exactly. And guys, get creative in your communities. There are so many people in need. I know when I worked, I especially saw this when I worked in my home health days for years, that so many of my patients who were homebound and they needed equipment, and either their insurance wasn't paying for it or it wasn't going to cover it or whatever the reason was. And, I would go through the Goodwills and at risk because I was having to accept that liability, but basically going to the Goodwills and trying to find equipment that was still in great shape. And I never had a problem with that. So again, get creative, look at your churches, guys. That's another great resource where some of the churches will have, a club or something that helps people who are homebound, right? So going to those people, they provide meals for the homebound. That's what my church does in some cases. So getting in touch with those people and saying, hey, do you have anybody in your community that needs some form of durable medical equipment, whether it's a walker, crutches that are in good shape, or a wheelchair? Yeah. So those are my thoughts on that. I don't know. How many of you guys have a closet? Let's do a little quick Cosi poll. How many of you guys have a closet or like a bin in your house or in your garage that's full of old medical equipment that you've been given? Like whether it's walkers or transfer tub bench or an elevated toilet commode or crutches or prosthetic feet. How many of you guys have like that little stash? Put it in the comment section. I want to hear from you. All right, we got Chrissy coming in. I already said hey to Chrissy from Nebraska. Let's see. Getting in some of these comments. Jerry, hey there, Jerry Ann, drinking a brown sugar vanilla coffee in Arizona face red heart shape. Oh, love it. Hey there, Pastor Dave. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very proud of my daughter. 101 in Arizona, Jerry Ann. You win. My car was reading 98 degrees today, so you win, Chica. We got Susan. Susan and Marshall are here. Okay, that just made my heart smile right there. Hey there, Lou. Lou is watching me from my YouTube channel. Guys, here's a quick Cosi Talks PSA. Facebook is doing this really fun thing where they erase your live videos after 30 days. Yes, and it erased a couple of my really good videos. So I'm really not happy about that. Guys, it would really be a huge help to me if you guys could start watching me from my YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to put the link up here for you right now. Even if you watch me from Facebook or Instagram, if you could just take a moment to go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be absolutely wonderful and very, very helpful. And I would greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, we got Mark coming. Mark, dude, I have not seen you in a while, man. It's good to see you. So Bill, can you throw up a little link for the sleeve saver? So one of the things that Janie was asking me is there a way to kind of protect these sleeves and these liners from getting beat up so much? So I know Bill has a product called the Sleeve Saver. I am not as familiar with it. I know it's a product that many people use out there, but I would love it if he could throw up his website on there and you folks can check it out and see if that's something that would work for you in preserving the life of your liners and your sleeves. We got Earl on board for sure. Only 2 years in. Oh yeah. All right, guys. So let's move on to the next question. Oh, actually, this question feeds in perfectly. It's Larry asking, how do you know when you need a new liner? So guys, the basic rule of thumb is you should replace your liner once every 6 months. Okay, so you should be seeing your prosthetist twice a year to get a new set of liners. When you are issued a new liner, you should always have 2 liners at all times, 2 functioning liners, one that you are wearing and then one that is being cleaned and dried, because it takes about 24 hours for these liners to completely dry because of all the coating and everything they have on there. So how do you know if you need one? It's kind of like okay. So when it's a little too easy to put on, that's kind of what I tell my patients. Like liners, and ladies, I know you can relate, it should take some effort to put on, almost as if you're putting on some Spanx or something like that, right? It should take a little effort to put on. If you're just slipping that liner on and it's just slipping right on, that probably means it's a little too loose, okay? Other indications that you know that your liner is too loose is if you start to notice that you're sweating a lot more in that liner. So that liner should fit really snug on your skin. There should be no air pockets. There should be no movement, no shearing, no friction. So if you're starting to notice more sweat in your liner that, wait a second, you're not sure you can really account for why. If you're starting to notice some red spots, like things like chafing and shearing and friction forces in there. If you get a blister, okay, that's an indication there that something's not right. It might be a little too loose. If it's a little too easy to put on. If you're noticing that when you're wearing your socket, you're like, wait a second, I've got all the right socks on, but I'm still kind of wiggling a little bit in that socket, too loose, time to go. If there's a rip in the liner, especially those of you who, so if there's a rip in the liner, that's also an indication that you might need to get it replaced. So yeah, and again, you should have one that's being worn during the day and one that's being cleaned. All Randy on all of them. Stephen, I'm not sure what that means. My pleasure, Bill. So guys, I think, whoops. Hang on. Just lost where I was in the chat section. So Bill, if you can throw up your website so folks can check out your sleeve saver, go ahead and throw that into the comment section right now. We got the mobility clinic on board, and Humphrey is joined on board for just a little bit as well. Interesting. All right. Here we go. All right, let's go to the next question. Okay, so speaking of Bill, somebody was commenting. So a few weeks ago, we did a great show with College Park, and we were talking about their new foot, the Odyssey IQ. So just to refresh your memory, guys, the Odyssey IQ is their newest foot. It's a microprocessor foot. Okay. Now, as with anything microprocessor, whether it's a microprocessor knee or a microprocessor foot, I always tell folks you need to see what's going on in the foundation of the foot. Okay. So even though it says microprocessor at the base, the Odyssey IQ is a hydraulic foot. Okay. And it functions as a hydraulic foot. It has a microprocessor component on it that is controlling the hydraulics. Okay. So how is that different from a regular hydraulic foot? The regular hydraulic foot, you are the one controlling the hydraulics and the movement in it, and you're going to have to put in a little bit more effort in order to do so. Okay. So with having that microprocessor component added, the computers are sensing where your foot is in space and reacting to the weight and everything in it, and it will adjust the friction in the hydraulic fluid accordingly. Okay. Comadre, girlfriend, we got to catch up. I know I called you today and I need to call you back. Okay. Say hello to my men and girls out there. Okay, so basically the benefits of a hydraulic foot, okay, are that they have you more connected to the terrain. Okay, so those of you who are having to traverse a lot of uneven terrain, it's a great way to really connect with the ground. It helps a lot more with going up and down ramps. Okay, so again, that uneven terrain. It takes the pressure off your residual limb and your skin. And then consequently, because of that, it's actually going to relieve pressure on your sound side. Okay, so you have a more tendency to really put more weight into the prosthesis itself. All wonderful benefits. So one of my viewers said, I don't think the microprocessor foot is a good fit since I'm working in dirt, mud, water, and very uneven terrain. I think the hydraulic foot fits more into my lifestyle. And he is absolutely spot on. If you are someone who is out there in mud baths and climbing deer stands and being on a fishing boat all day long, microprocessor foot is not the foot for you. Okay. At the end of the day, it's like wearing an iPhone on your foot. Okay. And you can't take the iPhone through mud baths. I've tried. It doesn't work. Okay. So, but it still doesn't mean that you can't take the benefit of a hydraulic foot and use that. So in the case of this particular individual, I would not necessarily recommend the Odyssey IQ. I would recommend the K3 Odyssey. Okay. And it's kind of like why it's one of my favorite hydraulic feet right now, because they have College Park has a K2 version Odyssey. They have a K3 version, and then they have the microprocessor version. So if you think you're a candidate for a hydraulic foot in general, okay, this is a really fantastic option. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to post for you. Give me one quick second. I'm going to post for you the cheat sheets, okay, on everything you need to know about prosthetic feet. So for those of you who are new to the show, those of you who have watched the show for several years, you know that I like to classify my prosthetic feet so that when it comes time for you to choose a new foot, okay, you are choosing it based on, and of course my computer's being a dork. Okay, you are choosing it based on the function and what your needs are. Sorry, I'm like copying and pasting and trying to look around my camera while I'm doing this. Okay, thank you guys for being patient with me. Okay, let's throw that up there. Okay, there's the link, guys. So there's like a cheat sheet. So it's like a PDF document that you can print out and just have it with you when it comes time to looking for a new prosthetic foot. It explains to you all the different classifications. What are the advantages and disadvantages of the type of prosthetic feet? Who is it made for, right? And that's the important part, is what kind of activity in your life determines the kind of need of the kind of foot that you should be looking for. Air. Oh, good heavens. Oh, you know why? Because I didn't. Thank you for checking that for me. Okay, so I have my, good heavens. This is what happens when you try to multitask and it doesn't work. Because I have my camera and it's blocking where I have the tabs. Here we go. Let's try that again. Okay. Bene? Okay. Let's try that one out. Let me move my camera back to where it belongs, right there. My tech team right now somewhere is just kind of smacking their heads right now. All right. Okay, you're following me on all sides. Thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate that. And guys, again, just to, this is my shameless plug. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I will this summer. I promised my sponsors I would get onto TikTok. I have been avoiding that and kicking and screaming and everything like that, but I will join the modern day and get on TikTok. But for now, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And even if you like to follow me just on one of those platforms, if you could follow me, if you could just kind of subscribe or follow on the other platforms. Again, it just helps show my sponsors and show the community why we need to continue having Cosi Talks as an educational resource. Hey there, Linda from New York. Glad to see you here. All right. So guys, there you have it. So again, taking into account, is the Odyssey IQ an awesome hoopy scoopy new foot? Yeah, sure is. Is it meant for everybody? No, it's not. If you're someone who's in mud and dirt and all that all day, not for you. And you might want to check out the K3 version. Francis said, made it. My foot is a Freedom Cantera hydraulic foot, and it's Francis in Orlando. Glad to have you here, Francis. And again, guys, if you determine, like looking at my cheat sheets, right, and you say, you know what, I am a candidate for a hydraulic foot. Choose a hydraulic foot from College Park. Choose a hydraulic foot from ProDeer. Choose one from Ottobock or Oser, okay? And trial them out and see the differences, okay? They're not all going to be made equally. And what fits for one person is not going to feel good to the other person. Okay. Again, going back to these car analogies, you can have a four-door sedan in Toyota, four-door sedan in Chevy, and a four-door sedan in Honda. And I can promise you, they are all going to drive completely differently, right? You got the basic concept, the basic size and shape of the car, and the kind of person that will drive a four-door sedan, right? You got a certain type of person that will want that kind of a car for their lifestyle, but how it drives is going to be very different. All right, guys, let's go to my sound off. And this one, oh dear heavens, this one I got tagged. Let me just start this. I got tagged in a post in one of the amputee support groups on Facebook. It's actually one of my favorite support groups. It's run by Jeffrey Cook, amazing individual, amazing admin, very supportive group, huge group. We're talking like thousands and thousands and thousands of amputees. And this particular individual went in to go see their physical therapist for the first time. And this person is an above the knee amputee. So she posted what the physical therapist told her at the initial evaluation. And apparently, and let me see if I can get the wording right. The physical therapist said to her, I hate to be a Debbie Downer. I've been a PT for over 30 years. And basically, that above the knee amputees, the best they can hope for is using a scooter. Pause for effect. So I don't typically get my panties in a knot over stuff I see on Facebook and Instagram, but this one really, really cheesed me off. When I first came out on Cosi Talks 7 years ago and I started the show, I was shocked at how many people had negative experiences with physical therapists. Okay. And if they had not had a negative experience, how many people didn't even realize that physical therapists were supposed to be a part of the recovery process during amputation? And it was one of the things that had really lit the fire under me to get this show going and to keep doing the education and information. Okay. Because the education information was needed, but also I wanted to defend my own profession. It was a profession that I have dedicated my life to studying, honing my craft, learning as much as I could about amputees. And I wanted to help, bring the information about, and then also just kind of, show folks, hey, PTs, we're kind of good people, right? We're good eggs. We're here to help. And we are an integral part of the amputee recovery process, lifelong process, right? And then we have bobo heads, because that's the only thing I can call it, is a bobo head like this one, who just says the most inane things. And guys, unfortunately, I didn't question this. Like, I'm like, nope, I can believe that there is a physical therapist out there that said this. Okay. And it is absurd to me on so many different levels. First of all, you don't talk to a patient like that. You just don't talk to a patient like that. That it's not professional, it's not courteous, it's not compassionate, it's not kind, it's not so many things, right? So that's not how you talk to a patient. And guys, I have a nice rapport with my patients. I develop a nice rapport, but developing that rapport takes time and it takes trust. The first time I see a patient come into my clinic, I'm not telling them, hey, you know what, sorry to be a Debbie Downer, but you got no hope. Are you kidding me? Okay. So that aside, terrible bedside manner aside, how could you be a physical therapist, claim that you're a physical therapist for over 30 years, and you've never seen an above the knee amputee do better than using a scooter? Like, you don't even have to be a physical therapist. In your 30 plus years of life, and I'm assuming this person obviously is probably in their 50s. If they've been a physical therapist for 30 years, it means that they're well into their mid to late 50s. Have you never seen an above the knee amputee walking? Have you never seen the Paralympics? Have you never seen an amputee walking around in your grocery store? Like, how have you just been even alive for this long on the face of this planet and not seen an amputee ambulating in a functional manner? Like, blows my mind. Blows my mind. And then the other thing, okay, and there's so many wrongs here, guys, so many wrongs. And I want to hear your comments on this one, because it's just like, pew, right? As a physical therapist, right, there's basic things that all of us have treated, right? Any therapist with 30 years experience, 23 years of experience, we've all treated total hip replacement, total knee replacement, total shoulder replacement, back pain, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, stroke. If you're half decent therapist, you've kind of at least laid hands on some of these different pathologies. Amputee's one of them. You might not be an amputee specialist, but if you've been a physical therapist for over 30 years and you've never seen an amputee, what have you been doing your entire career? Like, honestly, like, guys, there's some pathologies that I am not an expert. There's a lot of pathologies that I'm not an expert in, but I have some experience with them. Okay. And we're not talking about some exotic, strange disease. Amputation is, unfortunately, a fairly common enough thing in the United States. So for this therapist to have this kind of a perspective blows my mind. Blows my mind. And guys, I have so many colleagues out there that they say, look, I don't know how to treat amputees. I am not proficient in that, because they've dedicated their vocation and their careers to other specialties in physical therapy. I get that, guys. I get that. And I get that there's a lack of education, specialized education in the field of amputees. Okay. But to say that amputees, an above the knee amputee, the best that they can hope for is to use a scooter. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So right now, I'm talking to anybody out there who's listening who is an above the knee amputee. Don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. We're not all meant to become Olympians or Paralympians. But no, absolutely no. Okay. The key to success when you're an amputee, whether you're below the knee, above the knee, a hip disarticulation, a bilateral, an upper extremity, okay, it's having that team behind you. Okay. Starts off with having a phenomenal surgeon who is good, doing well with your surgery. It starts off also with having a good prosthetist and a good physical therapist and a good occupational therapist. And that's just the bare bones skeletal structure of your team. Okay, I'm not even talking about the social worker, the psychosocial, the mental health part of it. Okay, everything else that goes into the recovery process. But guys, to become successful as an amputee, it is very well within your reach. Very well within your reach. Okay. I have folks that have incredibly low mobility, that they have a lot stacked up against them, but because they had the right care, because they had the education and they had the motivation and drive. They were incredibly successful with their mobility. Now, does success with mobility look different for everyone? Yes. Yes. Okay. So for some folks, being successful and independent with their mobility means that they use a wheelchair for their primary source of mobility. For some people, yeah, they might use a scooter, and that is their choice to use a scooter. Okay. But to make that blanket statement is absurd. To make a blanket statement saying that the best an above the knee amputee can hope for is to use a scooter is absurd and ridiculous. Okay. Again, I very rarely post about idiotic things that people say, but this one got me good. All right. I'm going to read some of your comments on here because I'm like, I know y'all got something to say about that. Pastor David's like, what? Hey there, Sean. Yeah. Emily's like, that's really good for motivation and self-esteem. I know, right? It's just like, just basic bedside manner. And guys, I've had some folks over the years where they're in bad shape. Okay. They're in really bad shape and they have a lot of factors that are not going to be conducive to becoming independent ambulators. Okay. And for the most part, a lot of these people are aware. They're aware that they are not in a good situation. Okay. But there's a way to talk to your patient without completely crushing them. Right. And in my opinion, unless you're on your deathbed, there's always some improvement that can be made. And in these extreme cases where I'm looking at this individual and on the inside I'm going, please God, help me figure out how I can help this individual. Okay. There's always something that can be done. And that's where you start. Okay. And that's how you talk to your patients. You're not going to sugarcoat things. You're not going to blow sunshine into their ears, okay? And you're not going to lie to them about what they can or cannot do. You can be realistic, but how you deliver that, you need to deliver that with kindness, compassion, just a little bit of a clinical competency, and then just saying, okay, how can we get you to another level? How can we help you improve the situation that you're in right now? And that's where you start. Robert says, learn today, physical therapist needs to be spoken with, explain what is working, what is going on, and a solution agreed upon with the same end goals. Yes, right there. It's teamwork, guys. It really is. I can't do my job. And my job as an amputee PT is dependent on two things. Number one, socket has to be fitting beautifully, right? That prosthesis needs to be spot on, especially with the socket. If not, I can't do anything. And number two, I need to be working with my patient and my prosthetist, but I need to be on the same page as my patient. And that includes when things are going well and we're high-fiving each other and when things are not going well, because there's going to be a lot of times where things are not going well, right? And you have to acknowledge it and you have to regroup, pivot, and move in a new direction. And you have to make sure you are with your patient in this. Tom says, I'm surprised she's been a PT for as long as she has, very unprofessional. I'm sorry to say that I am not surprised. And guys, I spend a lot of times, I love to ruffle some feathers on this show, right? And I will call out, I've called out surgeons, I've called out prosthetists, I've called out PTs. Okay. And I still stick to what I say sometimes, where 9 out of 10 clinicians are good eggs, right? We are here to help people, whether it's your surgeon, your PT, your OT, your prosthetist, whomever it is. 9 out of 10 people, good. We have good intentions. We're good at what we do. It's the 1 out of 10, man, it's a doozy. It's a doozy. And yeah, in different areas of my profession, I've unfortunately seen some really bad apples. And it's incredibly frustrating, especially for those of us who are working to try to do our job right and to try to help our patients. And then you see other folks that are not. But I think you find that in any profession. Let's see. Yeah, it's incredibly sad. Yeah, Lou is like, head smack. I'm like, yeah, no. I looked like a rabid football fan when when I saw this post that somebody had tagged me on. I was just like, are you kidding me? So Christy says, I switched physical therapy because all they were doing, I was riding a new bike and then walking with cane 7 months ago, left knee surgery. And I've been with these guys 3 times and they were working with my knee and leg besides balance and walking. Yeah. And that's another thing, guys. And I've talked about it on the show and I'll keep saying it. If you go to a physical therapy clinic, right, and all they're doing with you is putting you on a bicycle and walking you around with your walker or your crutches, that is not physical therapy. That's glorified babysitting. Now, is there a time to use a bicycle? Sure. On occasion, I might use a bicycle, a stationary bicycle, for the first 3, 4 minutes to get my patient warmed up until they start to break a light sweat and I know that they're warmed up. Okay, that's an appropriate use of a bicycle, but I'm not going to do that for 20, 30 minutes. Okay, we got stuff to do at my physical therapy clinic. We're not there for personal training. No, not throwing shade on personal trainers. We're not there to do personal training. We're there to do physical therapy. And a lot of that physical therapy is gait training. That's what we're there to do. You're not going to be doing gait training sitting on a bicycle. Okay. And even for my patients who are dependent upon their walkers, they're using their walkers for ambulation. I'm doing a lot of work in the parallel bars. Okay. I will do some practice with walking with a walker, but once my patient can walk safely with a walker, I have them practice that at home. Okay. Walking from point A to point B, just up and down to get their endurance up. They can do that at home. And I instruct them on how to do so with their family members and how to do it safely. Right. But if I'm just walking a patient up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, I'm wasting my time and I'm wasting theirs, right? That's not gait training. That's just walking a person up and down, up and down. Okay. Your therapist should be doing manual therapy, guiding your gait. They should be talking to you about whatever corrections for your gait. There should be gait training going on. You should be receiving instruction. Okay. And unfortunately, many folks who experience this is because they feel like they have no choice. They have to go to the clinic that their doctor told them to go to. They have to go to that clinic because that's the one that their insurance will pay for. And this is where I encourage people, guys, don't accept the you have to. Okay, don't accept that you have to. Okay. A lot of doctors work with PTs and they can have very, very excellent recommendations. A lot of the surgeons that have been on my show, they have their PTs that they work with because these are PTs who are amputee specialists and they're really darn good at what they do. Okay. But if you're being referred to a physical therapist just because that's who the doctor sends all his back patients to, that's who the doctor sends his total knee patients to, and that therapist doesn't have specialized amputee training and experience, that's not the right PT for you. Not the right PT for you. Robert says, like I said about this issue, suicide is high amongst amputees. Give someone no hope is the last thing they should do. Yeah. 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 And guys, again, it's not about being a Paralympian and turning your patients into a Paralympian and cartwheels and being able to walk like a supermodel. Not everyone is going to look that way. Everyone is going to look different in their progress. Everyone's going to look different in what their success is. Okay. And it starts by having a conversation with your patient. It starts by being honest with them and educating them, giving them that knowledge about what their body why is their body reacting this way? What are the implications of the changes that their body has gone through? And what can they expect? And then being honest with your patients. And I tell them, if ever I have a new student or a physical therapist who's a young physical therapist, I'm like, guys, you're not God. You don't know everything. Okay. You don't know how this patient is going to be in 6 months. Truly, you don't. With years of experience, and when you get to be an old fart like me, you can kind of guesstimate, okay, I think this patient can achieve this level of success. I can get this person to this point in their mobility. But there's going to come a point where you say, you know what, we get you here. And then from there, we have to reevaluate and set new goals. Okay. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, guys. I've made a lot of mistakes. Okay. And that was one of the first ones that I learned is being realistic with the patient. Okay. And working with them with their goals, finding out what is it that they want in their life and how can we help them achieve it. And if it's a goal that we may not be able to help them achieve, okay, how can we explain it to them in a way that they will understand and hopefully in time come and accept? Bill says, I can only say that PT saved my life, PT, OT, OP, and TBI therapy. Thank you. Wonderful. Maybe she was in a really small town. It could be, Stephen. I mean, I've seen some really amazing PTs. There's actually one that I know of in Texas that she lives in a very small town. She's a phenomenal amputee PT. Phenomenal. Okay. This happens in the big towns as well. It's It is what it is. Unfortunately, I think a lot, and again, I go back to insurance and how insurance reimburses physical therapists. A lot of PT clinics, and again, I'd love to hear you guys chime in on this one with your experience with PT clinics. A lot of clinics are requiring their therapists to see multiple patients an hour, multiple patients at the same time. Guys, you're not delivering quality physical therapy. You're not delivering quality care. And that's been going on for years. That's been going on since I was a high school student volunteering in clinics. And I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was. Y'all can probably guess already, right? Many, many, many moons ago. Okay. And I remember because as a high school student, I was working. I remember this one clinic. I worked as a tech all summer, volunteered as a tech the entire summer, 40 hours a week, the whole summer, right? And it was a Health South clinic at the time. Health South was all over the place. And I was running ragged as a tech. So as a tech, I was just, changing the linens. I was, bringing ice to the patients, hot packs, doing, simple things. But I would see these therapists and they were seeing 3, 4, sometimes 5 patients at the same time. And just thinking to myself, holy cow, how am I going to be able to do this someday? This is insane. That's why I started my own clinic, because I said, I'm not doing that. I'm going to see my patients one-on-one because I actually want to do physical therapy. Okay. All right. Robert says, I'm an above the knee osseointegration going to get back on 2 wheels and go coast to coast to prove we can do anything. If I can do it, anyone can. Be safe. Be safe. Oh my gosh, motorcycles. Be safe. Be safe. Sean says, a person's life has been turned upside down and they actually said that. Yeah. Maybe they need to change jobs and work in a morgue. Yeah. Honestly, guys, it's one of those professions where I'm just like, if you're not a people person, or if you don't like working with people, physical therapy is probably not the career for you. I'm just going to put it out there. Nursing, doctor, physical therapy, just anything in the medical field that involves a live patient might not be the field for you. And again, lots of burnout. I'm guessing this therapist is really burned out at that point to have said that. Yeah. All right. Mark says, went from scooter to thriving. Haven't touched one in years. You got to believe you can. Yeah. And guys, it's funny that she said the word scooter. Like it wasn't even like an above the knee will never be able to get off a walker, like scooter, which for me, I'm just like, I actually really don't like scooters. I really think, first of all, I don't think they're very safe. I've seen some crazy stuff happening with scooters. I think they actually cause complications like contractures and other issues and stuff like that. And that's a whole nother soapbox for later. I've already got enough soapboxes for tonight. But it was just one of those things where I'm just like, a scooter? As a physical therapist, you're recommending a scooter? Really? That's probably one of the most unsafe devices out there to use. Okay. Anyways. All right. We're going to move on. Emily says she had to do internships to get her degree, and I can't believe she never saw an AK walk. And again, guys, I can totally see in internships and things like that, you go to school for about 2 years of just solid school. And then the last year of your education as a physical therapist is spent doing internships. So I can totally see where someone might very well not have seen an amputee in that year of clinical internships, but 30 years as a therapist? No. And again, guys, nowadays, all you have to do is turn on your TV. Okay. And we're seeing amputees in commercials. We're seeing amputees in the movies. We're seeing them in TV shows. Like we're seeing it more in pop culture, and we're seeing them do amazing things. So it's just like, do you live under a rock? It's where I kind of wanted to post probably one of my favorite videos, and it's the one of John Register. He's been on my show a few times. John Register doing his long jump where he won the silver medal in the Paralympics, and just seeing this man run. He's an above the knee amputee. Just seeing him run is a work of art, honestly, at the peak of his shape, and just seeing him run. It's a beautiful thing to watch. Bill says, through my therapies, I pushed my therapist out to my car in my first set of prosthetics in 10 short days. Earl says, it's insane. I'm still trying to find a PT in the Sacramento area that works with amputees, and I'm still able to get using a chair scooter on my own. Insane. Yeah. Mark says, PT is where it all starts. Thank you for saying that. Let's see. Tom says she's also never heard of a great Canadian by the name of Terry Fox. He was an above the knee amputee and he ran a marathon for 143 consecutive days. Holy smokes, that's a lot. Emily says, I've never been told anything as bad as this, but there are times I feel like they don't know how to help me because of the other issues on top of the amputation. I wish I could get back to inpatient rehab. They had more experience with amputees. Yeah. And again, some of you who have more complicated cases, you may have other underlying medical conditions there. And again, it really does involve the need of a specialist. It really does. Yeah. So Earl's like, yeah, that's where I'm at with the insurance acceptance. And guys, I'm not going to lie. Our system needs a lot of work, right? We do need a lot of reform with our third-party payer system. It's not a perfect scenario. I've carved out my own little niche here where I can run my practice the way I want to run it because I don't accept insurance. But then the catch to that is that not everyone can afford to come and see me. And that is something that weighs upon me. It's another reason why I started this show is I said, well, for the people who may not be able to come to my clinic because they don't live in Tampa or because they, are not able to afford it, at least we can try to provide information here on the show. So yeah, I have not found a solution to this yet. Still waiting. Hopefully I will see it in my lifetime. Emily says, I know you don't work with insurance, but how are the number of visits determined? I was told twice a week for 4 weeks, but they didn't schedule me twice last week. And now they're telling me I can't schedule a final session. They didn't set up because they were overbooked. Okay. So the number of visits an insurance will give you is kind of an arbitrary number. Like it's a little ridiculous. And this is part of one of the many reasons insurance can be so frustrating. So if you look at a textbook, right, what they tell physical therapists is when you're working with a below the knee amputee, all right, a below the knee amputee will need on average 8 to 12 visits. So that averages out to 2 times a week for 4 to 6 weeks. An above the knee will need 12 to 20 visits. So that averages out to 2 times a week for 6 to 10 weeks. And then a bilateral amputee will need anywhere from, we're looking at 20 to 48 visits. Okay, so depending on the level of amputation. Okay, guys, these are numbers for if everything is going perfectly and smoothly. Okay, meaning that there's no health issues that are perhaps creeping in, that the person has no issues with their skin, like they don't have a wound that opens up or a blister, or everything is going swimmingly with the prosthetic socket. And guys, we know that that's not the reality. The reality is that as you start to progress with your physical therapy, you're going to have some bumps along the way. You're going to have some setbacks. As you become more active, your residual limb starts to shrink and it changes the shape of your socket. And that may require adjustments to be made by the prosthetist. Alignment will have to be tweaked and moved around, okay? If, heavens forbid, you get an abrasion, you get a blister, it's game over until that blister heals, right? And that's the normal progression of recovering from amputation and learning how to use a prosthesis. You're going to be taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Insurance does not want to see it that way. Okay. So when a therapist is asking the insurance for visits, so for example, when I did, because I used to work for hospitals and home health agencies, and I worked with insurances for the majority of my career. Okay. And I would say, you know what, based on what I'm seeing for this patient, my recommendation as a therapist is that the patient receive X amount of visits for this many weeks. And insurance says, oh, aren't you sweet? Yeah, we're not going to do that. Okay. You wanted 10 visits. We're going to give you 3. And guys, I never learned the reason why. People would try to explain to me saying, well, the insurance has this algorithm and this and that and the other. And I go, so why is this insurance presenting with 3 visits and then the exact same case on another patient with another insurance and they're giving me 6 to 7 visits? There is no rhyme or reason. It's based on money. It's just based on money and how much the insurance is willing to pay. Okay. And then they will have the clinicians write the vocabulary. And that was another thing that was very frustrating for me because I would write my notes very carefully, very meticulously. I write a very good report. I write very good history assessments of my patients. I'm very thorough, but the insurance is looking for keywords. And if you don't put those magical keywords in a magical combination, they will turn you down. Okay. They will turn you down. Okay. And it is incredibly frustrating. And it's also very time consuming. Okay. I opened up my clinic, and just to kind of give you guys a quick little history for those of you who are joining me recently, I opened up my private practice 7 years ago. Guys, I was already 15 plus years into my career, 4 kids, a lot of stuff going on. I simply did not have the time, okay, to go and take the courses I would need to take to learn about Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance. I simply did not have the time to go and do all of that and then become my own private practice owner. Okay, even with all the years of experience that I had had working with insurance-based agencies, okay, we had billing secretaries, we had people within those agencies that would help us try to get this reimbursed and all that kind of stuff. Okay, my job was as a therapist was to treat the patient. That was my focus, and that's what I wanted the focus to be when I opened up my own practice. And I knew I was simply not going to be able to keep up with all the rules and regulations and laws and everything involved with insurance-based care. It's incredibly time consuming. And then unfortunately, the consequences, if you make a mistake, and I'm not even talking about the people who are committing fraud and all that kind of crazy nonsense. I'm talking about just simple mistakes that you might make in your paperwork. Okay. And then the consequences of that can be pretty dire. Okay. So I know I'm like, whoo, going off on another soapbox. But when it comes to how is the visits and number of visits determined? It's not determined by what the patient's needs are. I'll tell you that. It's not. It is not. In some of my home health visits, I'd have a person who was discharged from the hospital and they could barely move a finger. And I would be given 2 PT visits. 2. What am I supposed to do in 2 PT visits for a person who can't even lift their head off the bed? And one of those visits has to be an evaluation. Yeah. What I can tell you guys is those of you who are using your insurance for your physical therapy, which is going to be the majority of you, stay on top of it. Get to know your insurance. You have to advocate for yourself in that regard. Okay. And when you start a new physical therapy regimen, okay, making sure that the therapist is explaining to you, these are the amount of visits that you have. Okay. And then ask them the questions. What happens if I miss a visit because I do have a blister or I have to go to the prosthetist and have an adjustment made? Is that visit going to be lost? Can you document and then have that visit saved? Okay. Stay on top of it, guys. Okay. Stay on top of it and get to know your insurance and how it works. And that's honestly, unfortunately, that is the best advice I can give you. I wish I could give you more in that regard. Francis says, I'll be going to PT once my new prosthetic filler brace and foot adjustment. I'll be walking my son down the aisle and my PT's excited to get started on that. Michael says, I'm late. I can already tell this was a good discussion. You're late, Michael, but it's good to have you here, man. Glad to have you here. We got Steven says, hello, a little late, but I'm here now. Glad to have you guys here. Yeah, and being on Medicaid does make it harder. And guys, I know I'm like, I really do wish I had a solution, and I don't. My solution, Ty May, girlfriend, it's good to see you. We got Timothy on board. I just peeked over at my Instagram channel. We got Nelly asking how to prevent neuromas. Hola from Puerto Rico. Mi boricua. Nice to see you, Nelly. Okay, we're going to switch gears. Let's answer that question. How do you prevent neuromas? Okay, so the short answer is you can't. But the longer answer that I'm going to give you is you can kind of, if you are going in for your amputation, or if you are having a revision done for whatever reason, talk to your surgeon about TMR, targeted muscle reinnervation. Okay, so let's just back it up just a little bit. Guys, when a surgeon does an amputation, right, they cut through the skin, they cut through the muscle, they cut through the bone. When it comes to the nerve, they pull the nerve gently, they cut it, and then it retracts back into the soft tissue. And the surgeon will tuck it back into place in the soft tissue. Unfortunately, if that nerve is left to its own devices, it's going to heal with a ball of scar tissue around it. And that's what's called the neuroma. Okay. Now, if you have a neuroma forming on a motor nerve, meaning a nerve that makes the muscle move, it's probably not going to affect you in any way, shape, or form. If that neuroma is on a sensory nerve, meaning a nerve that used to provide sensation, that's where you get the fireworks. That's where you have the really debilitating pain, the zingers, the phantom pain that can start shooting off. Okay. It used to be that they would go in and they would remove the neuroma, and that's it. So what would happen? The neuroma would grow back. And then two brilliant doctors by the name of Dr. Gregory Demanian and Dr. Todd Kuiken back in the 1990s, I think it was actually 1990, over 30 years ago. Someone can do the math for me. Over 30 years ago, they developed what was called targeted muscle reinnervation. Okay. So what they do is they take the end of that nerve, and instead of just letting it flip flop around in the tissue, they reinsert it back into a very specific point in the muscle. Okay. And they'll attach it to another nerve. So they'll graft it together, and that way that nerve starts to do its job again. Right. Idle hands make devil's work. So if you leave that nerve flip-flopping around in that soft tissue, it's going to cause trouble. If you give it something to do, so after it's been cut, you put it back into the muscle and you give it something to do, it's going to behave itself. There's another, what I call a sister surgery. It's called RPNI. Okay. And instead of taking that nerve ending and plugging it back into the muscle, they take a little muscle graft and they wrap it around that nerve ending, and it has the same effect. Okay. So it gives that nerve something to do. It keeps it happy and it prevents it from causing trouble. So Nellie, the best way you can prevent a neuroma is by talking to your surgeon about this. So if you know that you're going to have an amputation, find a surgeon that does this. And you can do so by looking it up on the directory at, please hold, at tmrnerve.com. And let me write that over here, tmrnerve.com. Okay. So if you look up on their directory, it tells you by state which are the surgeons that do targeted muscle reinnervation. Okay. And by now, guys, if you live anywhere near a major city, you're going to find lots of surgeons who do this procedure. And I would encourage you, go with one of those surgeons. Okay. Bill says, squeaky wheel gets all the oil. Yep. Steven says, I love my scooter, but only go short distance. I'm riding my bike, hiking, walking, 5K, bowling, and kayaking. And guys, yeah, it's like, at the end of the day, you do the mobility that works best for you. It gives you the most independence and gives you safety. But I won't lie, scooters just make me nervous. They make me nervous. I've seen some people do some crazy, crazy stuff with those scooters. All right, moving on to the next question, because there was a question here that was like, ooh, this is a great question because I love this. Ooh, okay. So this person sent me a text message and it said, I received my new prosthesis last week. It's a Kenevo. I think it's Kenevo or Canova. I always get it mixed up. Sorry, guys. Sorry to Ottobock. Microprocessor knee. I start PT on Thursday. Prosthetist said I'm turning my foot in when I walk and wants the therapist to work on that. And I do. I want to gain strength, learn ways to use the knee. I tried walking up sticks and it wouldn't bend. Also, what are things I need to do or ask the PT? Okay. So when it comes to your prosthetic foot or your prosthetic knee, having a basic understanding of how it works is really going to be helpful for you in terms of gait training. And you're just like, well, of course I know how a knee works. It goes back and forth, and that's how it works. And it goes, yeah. But some of these knees have different functions. Okay. So let's just talk about the Kenevo in particular. The Kenevo, I might be, and guys, if there's anybody from Ottobock out there listening, I'm sorry. I've never officially partnered with you before, so I can't tell if it's a Canova or Kenevo. I always get the name mixed up, so I apologize in advance. Anyways, this is their K2 microprocessor knee. So it's meant for a K2 user. What is a K2 user? Someone who is able to walk inside their home, someone who can walk a little bit in their community, okay, but they're not going to be changing their speed a lot. They're not like, they're walking at a constant, steady speed. Okay. So these are folks that, they have a little bit mobility, but not a lot of mobility. These folks are at a higher risk for falling. Okay. And the reason why I'm saying that is because having a microprocessor knee for a K2 user is actually a wonderful thing because it can help with the risk of falls. Okay. So this particular Canova knee, Canova. Anyways, Kenevo, I think is the name of the knee. Can somebody look that up for me? Because it's just going to bug me until I get it right. Is it a Kenevo or Canova? I should know this by now, right? Okay, it's a hydraulic knee. Okay. There's two ways that your knee is controlled: when your foot is on the ground in stance phase, and then when your knee is swinging through the air. Okay. So when you're looking at a knee, you're looking to see how is the movement controlled during that time. Okay. So in this particular case, the Kenevo is being controlled by hydraulics. Okay. So that's one of the things that's good to know. It also means that when you're walking with it, you're going to have a little bit more ease with that knee. It's going to be a little bit smoother compared to a knee that does not have hydraulics in it. Okay, so that's kind of a cool thing with this knee. Okay, now when it comes to learning how to walk, a lot of times people with their microprocessor knees and even with their mechanical knees, they have a lot of hesitancy with bending the knee. Okay, let's do another quick Cosi poll. For those of you who are my above the knee amputees, I want you to tell me, do you find that you have trouble bending your knee when you walk? Let's put that in the comment section. Yes or no, yes or no. In the meantime, I'm going to plug my little Cosi Talks glass right there. All right, so guys, for those of you who are my above the knee amputees, do you have trouble bending your knee when you walk? Do, 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 do. Nellie says, I had a TMR procedure with my amputation, but now I developed a new neuroma. Thank you. Okay. And Nellie, again, I'm sorry to hear that that happened. Hopefully, I'm hoping that you had a good success with the TMR procedure that you had. But if your surgeon did not address all of the neuromas or particular neuromas in your leg, that could be the reason why your other one is now having a problem. All right. So guys, when it comes to using a microprocessor knee or any knee, it's learning how to bend the knee. And in order to bend that knee properly so that it swings through and you don't stub your toes, you have to be able to trust that. You have to be able to put weight into that leg. Okay. And that's scary. It's kind of a catch-22 is in order to be safe and confident with that knee, you have to put weight into it, right? But then you have to trust it to get it to bend. And if you don't, you're going to start falling all over the place. So it's one of those concepts that you got to kind of break it down in the beginning. Okay. So understanding how your knee works. How does your knee bend? Okay. This is a really important concept to know as an above the knee amputee. Okay. So when you are putting your weight down on the knee, on the foot, right, you're going to get to a point where the knee has to bend so that it can swing out, right? If you've prepped your leg and you've done everything correctly, that swing will be smooth and you really won't have to think much about it. Okay? So with the Kenevo knee, in order for that knee to bend, it has to be behind you, well behind you. It's what we call a position-dependent hydraulic knee. So in order for that knee to bend, it has to be in a particular position. So that's why it's called position dependent. Okay. So it means it has to be far enough behind you for the knee to recognize, whoop, it's time to bend now. If you're taking short, tiny little steps, that knee is not going to let you bend. Okay. And you're going to end up having a very stiff legged gait. And I'm talking about in particular with the Kenevo knee, the way this particular knee works. Okay. You have to be able to take the right length of step in order for that knee to bend and for you to be able to swing that knee out. Now, there's a lot of hydraulic knees that work like that. Some hydraulic knees, however, it's not the position of the leg, it's how much weight you're putting into that toe to release that knee. Okay, so again, it's really important for your prosthetist and your physical therapist to explain this to you, for them to understand. Obviously, they're going to understand how that knee works, but for them to explain to you, this is how this knee works. Okay, and I'll do that with my patients, especially when I'm and I spend a lot of time in that particular part of the gait cycle, guys. I spend a lot of time teaching my patients how to unlock their knee, how to bend their knee. Okay. And your patient as a patient, you have to be able to trust that foot, putting weight into that leg and having right timing and positioning. Okay. And I'll remind my patients over and over again, if they're getting stuck with their knee and they can't bend that knee, to think about, how does that knee work? Okay, if it's position dependent, it means my foot needs to be in a particular position, in a particular spot, in order for that knee to unlock. Okay, so that's the recommendations I would tell you. Those are the questions you need to ask your prosthetist. Those are the questions you need to ask your physical therapist. And if your physical therapist is not as familiar with these different types of knees, because they got to know the little bit, kind of the nitty gritty of that knee, to tell them, hey, let's call the prosthetist and ask the prosthetist to tell us how this knee is working, or why isn't it working for us? What are we missing here? And encourage that conversation between your prosthetist and your PT. Guys, that's how I learned so much of what I learned about prosthetics, is because I talked to the prosthetist, right? They're going to be the experts on the prosthetic side of the equation. Okay. Earl says, Alex knee, no problem. Just how to learn to load the toe. And again, with the Alex knee, that is what we call a polycentric knee. And that works very differently than the hydraulic single axis knee that I was referencing here with the Kenevo. Okay. The way these knees are constructed, they have their little idiosyncrasies there. So understanding how the knee is constructed and how it's meant to function, okay, is going to determine how it works. Now, what I love about the Alex knee is I love a polycentric knee. And I believe it's I think there's only one or two out there on the market that are polycentric and microprocessor knees. And I know I'm kind of getting into the weeds here for a minute, so just bear with me. But I love the polycentric. And again, the polycentric, so much depends on the alignment. So if your prosthetist has that aligned just right, just at that sweet spot right there, it will bend at just the right time, and it'll give you that freedom to move the leg without making you unstable. And it's an alignment game there with the polycentric knee. So Robert says, I sat there for an hour trying to figure out my first knee. And once I figured it out, I walked the next day unassisted. Okay. And again, it's one of those things where, guys, this is where physical therapy really plays a role, because I see so many patients that, and I joke around, it's like they've got this magnificent piece of technology, and it's like driving a Ferrari in first gear and burning the clutch. Like, it's just like, or stripping the gears, where you're just like, oh my gosh, right? If you're going to have these wonderful pieces of technology with these knees that are worth thousands of dollars, you want to use it and be efficient with it, right? You want to be able to trust that leg enough to be able to bend that knee properly when you're walking. Not only are you using the technology correctly, but it's going to make you more efficient. It's going to sap less of your energy while you're walking, much more smooth. Yeah? Okay. Okay. We got Shirley on board. It's a party. All right, guys. That is it for, oh wait, no, I had one more question. I promised this person I would answer this question. This person said, I just had my knee disarticulation last Thursday. What do I need to be aware of and watch out for? The goal is to get back to work in the OR, play with my pasture puppies, mini Highland cows, and maybe get back on a horse. Okay. We did a lot of questions on knee disarticulation, and I'll cover that a little bit. I'll give it a little more love next week, but I do want to just kind of briefly go over a couple of things here. The greatest advantage a knee disarticulation amputee will have, especially over and above the knee amputee, is that they have the entire femur intact. So they have the full length of the femur. So in many ways, a knee disarticulation patient will almost function almost like a below the knee, almost. Okay, below the knee is going to have the greatest advantage because they have the entire knee joint intact. But a knee disarticulation patient, especially someone who is very active, I've seen some pretty amazing things there. Okay. The biggest consideration is going to be the prosthetic device, in the sense that the prosthetist needs to be skilled at fitting for knee disarticulation. There are certain knees that are more favorable to knee disarticulation. The alignment has to be done, has to be spot on. And the cosmesis has to be taken into account. So you are going to have some limitations with the knees and the feet because of the build height. So because you have a longer femur, right, you don't have as much space between the end of your femur and the ground to work with. But again, that's the whole job of the prosthetist, is to make accommodations for this. The biggest advantage is that you have the entire length of your femur, which is a wonderful thing. You have a longer lever arm, and also you're going to have the ability to bear weight at the end of your knee, at the end of your femur. Okay, and that's a very, very big advantage. It's also going to be very helpful because you can also have lower trim lines on your socket. So you're not going to have not necessarily have to have that socket all the way up into your groin area. You can get away with having a little bit of a lower trim line because you have a longer lever arm. Okay, so those are just some of the brief points about knee disarticulation. I promise next week I will go more into detail about that. And again, guys, keep sending me your questions. Cindy says, thank you for answering my text question. My pleasure. I will ask the physical therapist tomorrow to help me with the knee. I'm walking with walker, but knee isn't always bending. I have learned so much. Well, thank you very much, Cindy. And again, guys, those of you who are working with your PTs, the PTs that want to help you, again, encourage them to communicate with the prosthetist, especially if they have questions. And guys, your PTs are actually always welcome to reach out to me directly. I've had several PTs over the years that have contacted me asking me questions. And if I have any of my colleagues sitting there now listening, I am here to help. So if I can help you troubleshoot a case, if you want your physical therapist to connect with me, encourage them, give them my information, say, hey, she's willing to answer questions for us. All right, guys, with that being said, I'm going to go finish the rest of my Olipop, whatever this stuff is called, soda for this evening, and try to cool off a little bit in this Florida weather. As always, guys, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your lives this evening. Please, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, give a like to this video, thumbs up, all the warm and fuzzy things like that. All right, guys, I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. God bless.